Okay, and we're done with the smoke. Now I want to add the water surface and the ship to render, and then in Nuke I will see what extra elements I need to add to my scene. Because, well, the one thing is when you have a plane, how many elements you should add here and where you want to put them. And another way is just when it's just in your mind, in your head, and always better to make a previous. And in my case, I won't do this, but I will add a ship, the smoke, and the water surface and a background, and then I'll understand where I want to put some extra details if I need to. Maybe no. So let's merge those guys. I mean, let's call this main smoke, I guess. All right, so the main smoke is our geometry. So ship for the rendering I will set up later. Now let's talk about the water surface. Let's close this thing here and make it a little bit smaller. I guess it will be enough. All right, so let's create a geometry. So basically how water surface works. In fact, if you want to have a quick setup for the waves, we can go here to the oceans, and we have the small and large ocean. Have the wave tank, different setup if you want to make a simulation on the water surface, if we have like a moving ship or something falling on the water or rising from the water. In our case, we don't have any kind of interaction. All what I want to have is just a wave on the water surface, because I want to have a nice animation, nice reflection, shadows, etc. So when I press this, sorry, it's all small ocean. Anyway, I want to large. It's not a big difference between them, but anyway, we can press the large ocean, and we're gonna have a water surface. So we can do this manually, step by step, by working with an ocean spectrum, but I think that it will be much quicker to use the shelf tool. This may be one with one of the not many tools I use from the shelf, because sometimes for some simulation it can be useful to work with flames or explosion from shelf tools, but it's very rare situation for me. But with this ocean surface, I will create almost the same setup, so it will save a lot of time for me. And yes, I will change many stuff here. I don't want to have such big waves, and etc, etc. So let's play with that. All right, so how we will work with this? We don't care about the ocean form, so we can remove those guys, so we can leave them. What we have here? We have two different grids, and the first one is the preview grid. If I enable this grid, let me make more room a little bit here, so maybe I will do this just to make more space for my ocean, and hit the sun. So if I go up, we can see that we have a huge grid. This preview grid has the same resolution as our render grid, is 8K, so 8,000 meters, 8 kilometers. It's pretty huge. Really, I don't need such a huge preview grid, so I prefer to add this grid manually. But in this case, I can just make it much smaller, go to my camera. This is my grid, it's just a preview. So how our waves working in this situation? Our task here using the ocean spectrum nodes create actually a waves. The size, the wind speed, the height, all those setups we will apply here, and then save this as a texture using the Save Spectra ROP, and apply this texture for the render grid. So the first task is look on the preview grid. We can increase the rows and columns. So 200 by 200, let's say 1000 by waves are 1000. The thing is, I want to create very small waves, and if I want to see, you know, those small waves, I definitely should have a bigger amount of polygons or primitives. So let's choose the flat wire shaded. Now you can see there's many polygons. So when I apply the ocean preview, when I make it visible, you can see now that I have a lot of waves. And the ocean spectrum is a very powerful tool for creating waves. We have settings for the waves, for the wind, for amplitude. We have even instancing. We can use the mask. So the thing is, the main task is not just create waves I want to with the size I want. I don't want to make repeating those waves, because in many cases, in some shots, even in movies, I can see that from the, you know, a big distance, we can see a repeating of those patterns. In my case, actually, we have a huge distance from this to there, and I don't want to have the same kind of waves, because especially in this situation, we can see that it's very, very flat surface. There is no any waves on this, but for a better picture, I want to add those. All right, so how it works. For the first setup, if I want to show you, I remove, I'll just again connect this here directly. I set the first ocean spectrum. So you can see there is two different ocean spectrum, and I will explain later why we're going to use both of them. So mainly the first thing I want to create is define the size of my waves. Definitely if you look from this angle, from this distance, those waves are very big. Very big. I don't want to such a big waves. So there's a few options we can use to define the wave size. And the first option is the speed. So the biggest speed, let's apply like a 15. You can see we have a bigger waves. So this wave on the right side is very huge and over there. So what I want to do, I want to reduce the speed to 2. That's how we can see now we have a smaller waves, much smaller waves, but the resolution for those waves is tiny low. So we can play with the resolution exponent and make it 10. And the grid size for now is 200. So basically what it means that we create like a pattern or a texture with 200 by 200 and apply to this. So you can see that there is many small waves on the surface. You can see here a reflection from the light. We create them. So let's say if I increase the wind speed more, and I will, so with resolution exponent you can see the difference. With 9 is like less details. With the 10 we have more smaller waves here. So if I use the grid size like 100, you can see that we have the same pattern here, 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 and here. So maybe even bigger to have a difference, a bigger difference maybe. You can see that this wave is the same like here, and here, and here. So we create a 4 square image and apply to this. So with the grid size 200, now I apply the same noise, the same pattern, but just on my plane, which is 200 by the way, yes I know, as you know. So now let's reduce it again to like 2. So I will increase the grid size, maybe like, I don't know, 350 to make it a little bit more bigger. And the depth 3000 we can leave. So the gravity, seed, all this stuff, you know, it doesn't too many influence. It won't apply many differences for my waves, for my small waves. The time scale, I don't need to change this. So we have the few other stuff is like a direction. I hope I will apply the 0. So we can choose in which direction those waves will move. And actually it's like a direction of the wind. All right, so the speed is 2, is fine, direction bias 2, directional movement, yeah, and the choppiness is like how smooth the waves on the topper areas. So maybe increase like 2.8 in this case. With an amplitude, I can leave all those settings by default. So the reference wind, the scale, so we can apply like a scale if you want to, like an 8. So we can scale our waves up to add a bigger amplitude, but I'm gonna leave it. With the wave instancing, I guess I will leave this by default too. So this radius by default is similar to 20, as I hope, yeah, 20. Without any mask, so I don't need a noise. All right, I will leave a suppression type, but without a noise. And that's my waves. So if we look on the rendering, so how we apply this texture, let me save the spectra. So I don't want to say my hip name, just spectra BGO. As you can see, we save just current frame. Even with wave animation, we don't need to save the sequence. Just one frame allows system to understand the not just where and how we apply the waves, but the movement and all this stuff. So save to disk. It doesn't take too much time. Now we can see that we have this nice file. And let's go to the material. So there's 2 different shaders. In fact, I want to remove the second one because I create 2 times our ocean. So let me sure that we apply the ocean surface, not 2, but 1. Okay, maybe we need the ocean volume, but anyway, we can leave this. Okay, so go to material, and you can see that inside of this material we have the displacement settings. And this displacement settings is take a spectrum geometry. This is a file we just saved. Okay, is take a displacement bound from the amplitude scale, which we leave by default. It was 3. It's important because if we change the lower, if you set a lower displacement bound, sometimes we can see black holes in the water. So we need to match those parameters. And we have again the wave min and max, and we use the channel, and we compute again the amplitude scale from our ocean spectrum 1 in this case. And we have some setup for the form. I won't use the form in this situation, this scene, so in some different lessons we will cover this later. And here we have a diffuse color, which is fine, and I don't want to change nothing here. I just want to show you where we apply our geometry. So as I said, we create a texture and apply this texture to the render geometry. And this render geometry doesn't need to have a huge amount of rows and columns because we apply a displacement, all right? And it's work by image. So we don't need to put the rows and column here. It's very important because if we use like geometry displacement using the points, and we have a huge distance for the waves, you can imagine how many polygons we need to have to apply a proper and nice, quality waves. All right, so we save the file and we have a render grid. And now I will apply this texture to the render grid. So let's go to the camera, main cam, go to out, and let's select, you can see that we have the fetch export spectra, and as one we can remove, and create dimension node for my ocean, actually for my waves. We can call this VS, the water surface. I'm gonna use my main cam. All right, so here's main cam, okay. So with the object, what I want to apply here is with forced object and choose the ocean terrain surface we want to. So come on, apply the stuff. And let's see how it looks. I use all my lights from here because I want to have end light from the sky and from the sun, and I want to have a volume light. I want to have a reflection from this volume light from a fire on the water surface. So let's go to render view, and this is my old render. I can snap it just to have something, and let's enable auto update, and let's enable the preview. So sometimes you need to be aware when you work with this setup, you always should leave this render here on the render grid, because sometimes when we apply our material not to render grid without a high amount of details, but we apply to preview grid, as you remember, there is a lot of polygons, 1000 by 1000, and it apply displacement map, it will take too many memory. Sometimes you can freeze your computer, and it sometimes can cause just the reboot can save us. So be aware with this stuff. Always check that render grid should have a render flag, not this. Even with the render grid, you can see that we have some time for calculation. It's not a very fast thing rendering the waves, but anyway, we can apply. Oh, there is another thing I forget about, is I save the both spectrum. I'm not changing the ocean spectrum too, so I make another it's my mantra. I don't want to have a mantra. Let's not pin this. Go to object and make save to disk again, because I need to change something here. We have a huge speed and we will have a huge waves. So I apply my raw geometry output to just ocean spectrum 1, and again press render. Let's turn off auto update. And definitely, if you want to add some reflections, some nice reflections, we can change our sky environment map. By default, it creates like a gradient. It can be nice if we don't have too many reflection element in our scene, but in our case, this water surface is very reflective surface, and there is a lot of information from the sky. So what I want to do after my test render, I want to change my skylight to some HDRI, or just for image from with the skies, with some clouds maybe, to have a nice reflection. So I make a pause. I don't want to waste your time. And we're back here. Now you can see that we have a small waves here. I use a preview mode, but we still can see that we have a waves. But those waves, they're repeating. In such a small scale, we definitely can see this repeating, okay? But I don't like where we have a large water surface and we have the same wave on the all distance. If you look on the waves on a sea, yes, mainly you can see that they mostly is the same, but we have some water movement, some wind differences, and in some areas there will be more smaller waves, in some areas they will be bigger. The same stuff here on this harbor. I think that we should add some areas with the smaller waves, or they should have a little bit less high and less speed, just a difference, some difference. They should be a little bit different from those waves. So how we can apply this? Let's stop rendering and let's back here, and this where our skater works here for our simulation. So why we apply the scatter node for our render grid? If we choose the display flag here, go there, and we can see that we create a bunch of points on the render grid. In fact, in this setup, I don't want to have such a big render grid like 8000, so maybe like 1000 by 1000. It should be fine. And if you look on our camera, it's looking good. So we can apply a display flag. It's looking pretty good. Let's transform this grid to change the position. We can apply transformation here in the center, but I prefer to use a transformation node over there. So let's move this here on X and Z and X and Z. I want to make my plane, I don't want to have too many geometry behind my camera. So that's 1000 by 1000, and now it's 2 ways of 100. Like to this. Let's see. Where's my camera? Where's my render grid? It's look pretty good. So yeah, something like this. Oops, that's too much. Get back my surface. Yeah, something like this. All right, so 400 by 400. And now what we can do is make a render flag here on transform node. So right mouse button, flag, render. So with the scatter, why we create those points? We create 2000 points on the surface with the relaxed iterations. And on those points, we make a split. So we divide those points, as you can see, is working like from 0 to 200, 2000, divide by 2. Let's not divide, but the half of those points we will send to the ocean spectrum 1 and another one half to ocean spectrum 2. Okay, we can change the amount of those points if we want to. We can just make a 3000 points and apply those points to our split. So connect the one exit or one output here and another one here. So for the another ocean spectrum, I want to set almost the same setup for the waves. Let me just connect this save spectra here and connect my ocean preview here. Let's enable that. So now it's gonna work. It will change. Apply our surface, come on. Now it's taking some time. And here we go. So now we can see what is the difference between our waves and a waves from the ocean spectrum 2. So from ocean spectrum 2, I want to decrease the resolution to 8, in fact, and make grid size 150, so the smaller grid size, and maybe like change the seed and be like, I want to manual update. I don't want to update this viewer for now. So 17 seed. I don't know, the height for the wave, let's even smaller waves. So the bigger speed, as you know, the bigger waves. In this case, I want to reduce the speed even more than we have here. So 2, we have in ocean spectrum 1 and 1.5 in ocean spectrum 2. And I want to reduce the choppiness, so it doesn't have, they have more like a smooth upper part of the waves. And I will decrease the radius to 20 as we had, so the mask, disable the mask. I don't want to add noise. And let's see what do we have with this ocean spectrum. So auto update again. And let's see, well, I get that in this geometry we can't see too much. But let's save it to our spectra. Let's save to disk and go to render view and make a render again. press render. And now as a result, we have some areas you can see even from this quality with the a little bit flatter surface. So you can see here that we have a transition for the bigger waves to the smaller ones. And it looks pretty good. And here, well, most of this water will be covered with the ship and the smoke and here, but it's good when we have some, differences, a little bit different waves. You can see that it's a bit flat surface and the more choppy waves here. Okay, so we stop it. Before we go ahead, I want to add some reflections from the smoke, ship, and other stuff. So I go to frame 92, like with the smoke, and go to the out. When we set up the smoke, the only thing we want to use as a force mat was the ship and our VS cut, which is just a simple plane, a simple grid. So we not apply any, the phantom stuff for this smoke. But in our case, I don't want to cut this area, but I want to put my smoke and the ship as the forced phantom objects, because I want to have a reflection and a shadow from the ship and a fire. So press ship, press fire cache, and accept. Now let's see what do we have again with just a preview mode, because as I expect, the render should be pretty long. And here we go. So for those of you who doesn't know what is mean phantom objects, when we use the object in the mate as a mate object, they will cut from the image, and in fact they will cut all what is behind those elements. With the phantom objects, we added objects in the render scene just to create shadows or reflections. So they look like in the scene, but we don't render them separately. There is no smoke and there is no ship, but we have a reflection, we have a shadow. So our water surface is looking like we have and a ship and a smoke. And I will render out just one static frame in this case, because all what I want is just understand where I should put some extra detail, as I said, because when I add those details, I will add also them into the phantom object. So I will render out just frame 192. And before I do this, I go to the objects, and I want to apply some image into the environment map for my skylight. So I want to choose the image that should be, can be, as I said, HDRI. Let me put some, and I don't like use where they are, the panoramic land and sky. So from the Marlin Studios, we have the textures with land and sky with 2 cities. I can't use this file for distribution because you can, buy them if you want to. But I want to use from a city 2, I guess. Yeah, it's from city 2. And we have a hemispheric sky. And you can see there's a lot of different skies. And from all those, I will, let me just, so here, let me separate by name. Yeah, I like this sky. So there's some clouds, and it's not like this sky, okay, because we have a very bright area there, but we definitely see some clouds over there. So I want to use this hemispherical, except. And what else I want to, so we can find any texture of the clouds or sky you want. You can use, you know, it's like a background. We can use even a background image for this. But anyway, we see that there is no reflection from this area into the water. But the reason for that, because I will cut this water surface from our final image and put reflection from our background. You will see how I can do that. Okay, so now you can see that it's pretty good. We have a reflection and the fire from our fire and smoke, and we have shadows from the ship. It's looking good. So stop this rendering and let's go to the image. And that's what I want to add extra stuff here. So when we're rendering geometry, what we can do, we can apply some extra images. With the extra images, we can select that, okay, I want to have some reflection separately for a different lighting. So we can set up indirect lighting per component, direct lighting per component. And sometimes, especially if you work with the large scales, large areas, we can output the depths and the normal. But I don't have the volume and SSS, so we can remove this. We have volume just as a phantom object, and we can remove, I think, the code too. So we will leave just diffuse, reflect, and refract option here. That's all what we need to do. Another thing is in the rendering tab, I will use the physically based rendering. I definitely don't need to use any kind of motion blur, and I will use the standard pixel samples 3x3. So that's what I want to use. And yeah, we can decrease the step rate for the volume because we use the volume just for a phantom object, so we don't need to have high details from that. And basically that's it. We choose the current frame, so just frame 192. And another thing I want to add for my smoke, so I save this file and we can see that we have a different areas, a different passes or extra images like a sunlight, the skylight, and the volume light. So basically what I want to do, I want to add the masks for the smoke and for the fire. How we can do this? Go to the images, extra image planes for my main smoke. I forget to remove the heap name. I don't need to do this. And I want to go here under the direct, our lighting passes. I press plus and add the smoke mask. Add another plus and add a fire mask. So how we can know that this thing is working? Well, for the lighting, we have a list of different vex variable here, and you can find our direct lighting here per component or just all lighting in direct light. So I type direct because I know how it spells. So, but here you can find, no, maybe there is some masks, but if you go to our shader, go to materials, and where is our, let's move here, make this thing smaller. So let's just press this. I don't want to have such a big note. So let's go to fire smoke, and the last tab inside of my pyro shader, we have the export tab. And we have the smoke and fire mask name, which is smoke mask and a fire mask. I don't want to render now again, but I will render out again just one frame 192 to make a compositing on a nuke. And another thing we should do before we make a final render is go to my camera. And I want to enable background image because I want to render those guys, on a black background, not on image, because all those, semi-transparent areas will have some color from the background. I don't want to do this. I don't want to have such stuff. I just want to have a black color behind my elements. So again, go to out and let me sure that I have the proper names: fire mask and a smoke mask. Pretty fine. I get that's all what I need for rendering. Let's choose render current frame. No more. All right. The last chance to see what is going on here. And yeah, I get this. That's it. So, and let's render my ship.